Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, everyone. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
I am good. I'm good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Just I have to pack. So I'm going to Portland and I leave tomorrow and I've done zero prep so far. But off to Forcelandia. Yeah.
Right. So when you say zero prep, you just mean zero packing rather than zero prep for Forcelandia in general.
Okay, so that's fair. I mean, I'm bringing with me a presentation that I've done several times.
Okay, so
Have I put it in the Forcelandia template? No. Like,
no.
have I built out the few things to take it from like a 30 to 40-minute presentation to a 50-minute presentation? Not quite yet. So I do have some things to do before I stand up in the gym at the very cool converted elementary school that they do this event at in Portland and present. So I do have some work to do on that regard. But yeah, of course, I've got tickets, I've got a place to stay, all that good
That's
stuff.
good. Yeah, just rocking up with like a backpack and some hopes.
No, no, I'm not going to show up in Heathrow and say, "Give me the next ticket on a flight to
Whack.
Portland." Yeah,
Yes.
just like just like in the films.
Yes. I was rewatching the American Office recently, and got to the episode where Michael left and Pam went and met him in the airport. And my first thought was like, who the hell gets through security at an airport and manages to go see someone? Like, that's just impossible. Like, she goes through. He goes through
Yeah.
security. She then goes through afterwards to say goodbye to him. She's not getting on a flight. You can't get through without a ticket and a boarding pass.
Well, but you used to be able to up
Yeah,
until
this was
September
two.
11th, 2001.
Yeah, this was like 2010. This was filmed.
Was it? Was it?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
I
that's
mean, there's a generation of people that will grow up watching old movies, but movies done pre 2001, where the trope of driving to the airport, meeting someone,
yeah.
chasing someone down at the gate to tell them you love them, just
Yeah.
won't work.
There was like a whole series of Seinfeld episodes and like sitcoms that were like that, where like they were
Yeah,
walking up to the gate, but they were never intending to get on the plane.
yeah,
Actually, in fact, Love Actually has that whole like chase scene at the end that's all based about the fact that he wasn't supposed to go through security, but like Liam Neeson like does the distraction and the kid goes and he runs for it so he can like tell his girlfriend or not girlfriend, but
yeah.
the girl that he liked that he thought she was cool. I forget the exact wording, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, there's Friends as well had a whole thing on it. So where they had where they called in an issue with the left phalange on the plane, which had Jennifer Aniston sat next to at the time in America a then unknown actor who was called Hugh Laurie.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so I have really fond memories of going through security as a kid and going out. So in LA, you would have these massive terminals at LAX,
yeah,
and it felt like you were walking for like half an hour, and you get out to these, I don't even know what to call them, like these pods that were sticking out from the main building that themselves would have like a whole bunch of actual gates on them. And you just sit there and watch the planes come and go. And I don't know why. But we had guests that would come and visit, but like I just have a lot of memories of taking the long drive from where I lived out to LAX and like sitting at the airport looking at airplanes. And as a 6, 7 year old, whatever I was, I thought that was pretty freaking cool. So
yeah. My we went on holiday with my niece earlier this year, and she is 3, and one of her favorite games now is to play Going on Holiday, where you have to
nice.
pretend you're going all the way through the airport experience with her in the front room. And so she
Very
checks
cool.
all sorts of stuff. The best bit is her. She's obviously like wheelie suitcases. How when you're walking, your arms kind of
Yeah.
one of the phrases drag behind you like that. So
Yeah.
she'll walk around with her arms behind her like this, kind of pretending she's carrying suitcases because she's seen her dad do it. Anyway, welcome everyone to the Salesforce podcast that is focused on playing airport as a 3-year-old.
Planes and airport security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So I'm Peter Chittum. I lead technical content at Salesforce Bend. Just to introduce myself, and yes,
yes, and I am Paul Batterson. I am obviously the host of Cloudlights TV, so please remember to subscribe to stay up to date with all of our latest and greatest content. And I'm also the CEO and founder of Groundwork Apps, who are a Salesforce ISV partner. And we're here today. So for those who are joining us for the first time, hello, welcome to the stream. For those who are regular viewers, welcome back. Please drop us a note in the chat to let us know where you are watching from. Whether you're on LinkedIn or on YouTube, just let us know, say hi. We'd love to see where you're coming from. But we run these streams every couple of weeks in which Peter and I go through and play around with some stuff in a live format, just to show you what it is like to code in the real world rather than, a scripted tutorial where people know exactly what's going to happen. And you can find all of the videos and previous episodes on the YouTube channel. As often happens, Peter and I get stuck. Things go wrong, very wrong. But we manage to get there in the end, don't we? And that's always the fun. So, what are we here to do this time?
Well, just to quickly interrupt, we can say hi to Ellie Matthewman and thank her for joining. So that's awesome.
Yes. Hey, Ellie. Welcome back. Welcome along to the stream. What are we doing this week? What is this episode about? So, talking about another Apex library. So, last stream, a couple of weeks ago, we looked at RF Lib and how we could use that for logging. We realized we probably should have read some of the documentation in more detail, which is, our bad. We both have jobs. We're both busy men. But this week, one of the things that came through at the end of that is we had Johannes Fischer, who is the author of RF Lib, kind of joining along live on the stream.
Which was great. I really appreciate it.
Yes, it was fantastic having him there to help us along. But one of the things he recommended to have a look into was SOQL Lib. I'm going to keep on getting that wrong, but SOQL Lib. So today,
I've been calling it SOQL Lib too, so hopefully that's right.
It is. That is the correct one. So we're fine on that one. So if you want to see the previous stream with RF Lib, you can do so here. I'm just going to post the link in the show notes in the chat. But otherwise, today we're going to look at SOQL Lib. And SOQL Lib is a very interesting one because it is an implementation of the selector pattern, which anyone who's viewed any of these streams before knows Paul has opinions, many opinions about many things, but the selector pattern is one that he does have opinions about. I know, yeah. And so we're going to talk a bit about that, what the selector pattern is. And then we have a new setup we're going to show you, which we're going to use for testing out not just this library, but a bunch of libraries going forward as well. It's all available on GitHub, so you can follow along at home if you wish, or play around with it yourself afterwards. So, the selector pattern, Peter. How familiar are you with selectors and selector layers and things like that?
I mean, I couldn't tell you anything about how they work on the inside. I was even struggling to remember the name for it before we were starting today. But I am familiar with using it, and I find that using selector pattern APIs tends to be very intuitive. Once you get to know kind of how the person who wrote that library was thinking, I guess is the way I would put it. So for instance, like in SOQL Lib, there's sort of a set of APIs that you can do that sort of construct some SOQL ostensibly, and then there's like a thing at the end basically that says, okay, now go do that, right? That's my very, very technical take on that. But I tend to like it just because I sort of like the feel of stringing together method call after method call after method call. It feels almost more like functional programming.
So that's the Fluent nature of this one that we're using. So we will talk about the Fluent API in a minute.
Okay.
But yeah, well, why don't we start off then by just talking a bit about the selector layer and what it is.
So I'm talking Fluent, and you were talking selector. Is that?
Yes. So this is and that's an interesting thing we'll cover off a bit today as well, is the differences on this. So the selector layer is one of the many patterns that has existed for a long time before Salesforce was a thing. I was trying to remember this, and I'll check in a minute as to whether or not the selector layer is a gang of 4 pattern, or pretty sure it's a gang of 4 pattern, or a pattern from Enterprise Architecture by Martin Fowler. So for those who aren't familiar, while Peter looks that up, I don't think it is. Yeah, no, I think it's Gang of 4. I think it's Enterprise Architecture. What I am referring to is, and you'll forgive me for wheeling away, second, is these two very big, heavy, but also well-known books. So we have Design Patterns, which is called the Gang of 4 book. 4 people on the author list. That's why it's the Gang of 4 book, and has lots and lots of wonderful, useful patterns that came out of the team that this group of people that were working largely with Smalltalk, which is a very well-known language historically. And the selector pattern.
So I'm not finding it as one of the Gang of 4 patterns immediately, but I'm doing this on the fly while also trying to listen to you. But what I can tell you is Perplexity's AI summary of the 23 patterns that are part of the Gang of 4 pattern collection doesn't seem to include it. There's creational patterns, which has singleton factory abstract, factory builder prototype. Structural patterns, which is adapter, bridge, composite, decorator, facade, flyweight, proxy. And behavioral patterns, chain of responsibility, command interpreter, iterator, mediator, memento, observer, state, strategy, template, and visitor. Those are the patterns in Gang of 4.
So I think this might not actually even be an officially labeled one here. I think it's in the service layer, but in the Gang of 4, in the Enterprise Architecture book. In which case, I'm going to give the naming for this to Mr. Andy Fawcett, from many different places, including to be on this stream in a couple of weeks' time, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, so the selector layer is an enterprise architecture pattern that most people will be familiar with from SOQL Lib. And the idea behind the selector layer is you abstract your queries and put them in a single class. And that class is the class that talks to the database back and forward. And then your service classes, your domain classes, etc., all use that single selector class. And so there is this wonderful picture here I will show on screen, which is from the original post Andy made introducing the selector pattern. So yeah, we'll have we can ask Andy himself if he came up with this, but I'm pretty sure, I know Andy based a lot of his stuff on the Martin Fowler stuff, so it might have been one from there that he's just relabeled.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not finding like a lot of references for it outside of, there's one from California State University that says the sponsor selector pattern. And then there's Trailhead, which I know there's an enterprise architecture module or trail, is it? That I think Andy Fawcett was involved in making happen, that has selector pattern. There's like a couple other websites that I can find referencing it.
Joe, I think it probably is from. I think instead, I think it might be the query or an implementation of the query object.
Okay.
Which is an enterprise architecture pattern. And this is kind of an interesting thing about Salesforce patterns in general, is a lot of Salesforce patterns that we are familiar with are ones that have been taken from broader enterprise architecture patterns, such as unit of work, domain classes, service classes, etc. They even practices from the rest of the kind of programming sphere, such as mocking and stubbing and things like that, all have their roots in broader software development and software engineering for certain reasons. But the selector pattern itself is there to help abstract away those queries. And the idea being that if you are wanting to get all of the information from your, let's say you want to get an account and you want to get it by ID, rather than writing the query out in every single place where you want to get that account by ID, and if you add a new field, having to update every single query, you have the query in one place in this selector class. And then if you want to query your accounts by ID, you call that method and it will run the query for you and return results. And obviously you can therefore do things like caching and things like that on the way. So that's the theory behind it.
So and repeat your initial definition, because I was hunting around for some references and I didn't quite catch it. And repetition is good for learning, we all know. So
yeah. So I'm just going to quote Andy's blog post here, which I'll put a link to in the notes for anyone who wants to read it themselves, from way back in 2013. But the selector is a layer of code that encapsulates logic responsible for querying information from your custom or standard objects and feeding it into your domain and service layer code, as well as any batch Apex jobs. So the idea is it's a class. All of your queries related to a particular object are in that class, and then you can call those queries from otherwhere. So you might have things such as like select by ID, select by name, get a query locator by ID, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of the overall basics of it. Is it's a class with your queries in.
Right. So it essentially becomes a something sitting in memory where you've defined maybe one or maybe several queries that you intend to use, possibly over and over again, and then once those are there, it makes it just much easier to go off and like make that query actually happen. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so there's two kind of things that I always think about with it. Number one is it follows the dry principle. So queries are still pieces of code. So rather than writing the same query out 50 times, you've got the query written once, so you don't repeat yourself. Okay, very simple on that front.
Yeah.
The second benefit is, and that obviously makes it easier for you to update in a single location, if you want to update in a single location. The second benefit is that you can start to do things like mocking and stubbing if you wish to. So you can have your account selector or your task selector or your contact selector or whatever can implement an interface or extend another class that is the selector kind of generic, and then you can pass whatever you want in. So what you can do is when you're setting up your class to go under test, you can say, actually, you can use this selector class in the real implementation, or you can use this mock selector class if you want in the test, and that should be quicker than running against the database. So it's basically inversion of control and dependency injection.
And that also means that like we can potentially use test data that isn't backed by the database, but we can still produce testable results that would be close enough to what we would get at runtime to get useful tests.
Yes, and this is where one of the episodes we're going to do is on a mocking framework and a stubbing framework, because I really want to talk through some of the reasons I don't do mocking and stubbing. And in a nutshell, it's because those things were invented for when you don't have access to the database in your tests. We always do. Like Salesforce, and right. You're not going to change, your Apex code isn't going to run against a different database, so you don't need to worry about that. And also there's a lot of stuff we have going on around our database that you don't have with a Postgres database or a MySQL database or a SQL Server database. We have admins adding validation rules and workflow, not adding workflow rules and process builders anymore. We have those things going on. We have flows, we have roll-up summaries, we have case assignment rules, we have all of these bits of point and click logic that I personally think need to be included in your test to make things realistic.
Now, I think we'll go into this in more detail, but I know one of the reasons people go in the direction of mocking and stubbing actual Salesforce data. So, outside of like mocking an API call or, mocking, let's say like a SOQL query, which you sort of have to do because it's non-deterministic. there's kind of a, I want to mock because it can make my tests faster. So we don't need to get into that detail today, but I do know that that's one of the reasons why people do it. I think it'll be really good to discuss that when we get there. So
yes, that is another big reason for it. And I can sort of share. I've been out of Financial Force long enough now. I don't think I'm giving away a trade secret to say that that was one of the reasons that a lot of the mocking stuff in FF Lib was originally come up with. I have had test runs that took overnight and then some when I was working there.
yeah, I believe it.
Because it's a huge database. It's a huge. I don't know how to. Again, secret sauce I'm giving away here. Accounting is very complex to do. It's you're doing a lot of data manipulation with a lot of things when you're doing double ledger data entry.
I was waiting for you to say double ledger.
Yeah. I love that phrase, but yeah.
Well, and I think, so anybody, if you get Paul, some, night after a developer group or after a conference at the pub, just start talking about double ledger accounting, and like I'm sure he'll have a rousing conversation.
So fun fact, just as a real little side story here, I have been involved in 2 accounting suite products on the platform. And I was having a chat with Andy Fawcett the other day. Me and him were catching up for, again, about the stream we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks, which we'll talk about at the end of the episode. But Andy's just started his own organization. He's out doing things for himself. He lives, a mile or 2 away from me, so we've been meeting for lunch and things. And I was just giving him the names of like some accountants and things to help. And he was like, we just sat there. I was like, there is part of me that always thinks I could do my own accounts and, I could do all these things. And he was like, yeah, he said I was the same. I was like, however, I just thought, pay for Xero, pay for the accountant. It'll be worth it in the long run than me messing around. And there was a moment where I sat there and said to Andy, you do realize that we are the 2 of the most qualified people to sit here and just say you shouldn't go building an accountancy system just because you want to run your own accounts. Like, uniquely qualified between the pair of us to be like, no, actually, this is a really dumb idea. Don't go do
that. Is very true. Like, that is just, there you go. Lesson for today. No matter who you are as a software developer, don't write your own accounting software.
Yeah, don't go vibe coding with Claude an accountancy system and hoping that it's going to work out. It will end in tears. Anyway, so the selector pattern, and one of the things you mentioned there, which is kind of a really interesting thing I want to lead on to, because I teased in the post earlier this week about this episode that I don't often use a selector layer. And I was on a client project a number of years ago where, I was the architect, was leading a team of about 30 people on this project, some internal to my team and a lot of them external to the client and other contractors. And they hired this developer, and this developer came on board, and he said, we're catching up one day, and I used to just, any new developer was coming on, I'd have a couple of hours with them to talk about the code base, the patterns we're trying to do and things like that, because I wanted to try and let developers develop and not have to go on endless meetings with me. Right. So I was having a chat with him, and this guy came back a couple of weeks later and was like, he said, can I just have a chat with you, Paul? I was like, yeah. I said, what's up? And he said, I don't want to be rude. I said, but like, why aren't you using a selector? Why are we using a selector pattern in here? Like, I thought all good developers use selector patterns. Like, why are you not using one? Why haven't you implemented one? And he was sort of like, he was sat there going like, I even said, I've gone through your books. I can't see that you've mentioned it. I don't know why you're not doing it. Like, why is it not in there? And it was a really interesting conversation. And the reason is that the selector pattern is really, really good, I think, if you're working in managed package contexts.
Okay.
I think it is far less useful as a consultant.
So and why is that? Like, I know there's some fundamental differences between what best practices look like in the context of what I'll say is the vast majority of customer implementations versus what an ISV would build. Certainly the ISV needs to work in every org. The customer just needs to work in their own org. But say more about that and what the implications of those 2 things mean for using or not using something like a selector pattern.
So there's, first of all, I'm going to get this out of the way. This is not the primary reason but there is the very practical reason of you're not paid to do it.
Ooh, oh,
And
interesting.
like it's like with any when you are a developer in a consulting setup, you are in fact being paid to write the least amount of code possible, to do the least amount of work possible, and to get the end game done as quick as possible.
So
And this is
possible for most features possible.
Yeah, and that's the real, not whatever realpolitik is for consulting, realconsultique version of it. Like that's how the real world works. You know, I once went to a customer who had 250 flows that they'd written, right? 250 record trigger flows, and everything was breaking. Everything was breaking, weirdly enough, and they were getting errors and errors and errors. And I suggested to them, I spent 2 weeks on a discovery project for them where I wrote up exactly how this logic flow could be done in Apex, how it would be improved, and how they would go through it. And when they said how much is it going to cost, I told them it would be a few weeks worth of work, and a number of thousands of pounds. They said no, well we don't want to use that. We've been, and their exact words were, we've been told by Salesforce we should be using Flow, and so we're just going to do that. That company no longer used Salesforce because it didn't work for them because they didn't update. And so there is a real world kind of setup here where if I'm sat there doing a lot of stuff that isn't needed, I don't get paid for it. And I am, as a consultant, your attempt here is to make the best solution that solves the problem that the customer has, not build the best solution that will work for every single org in the world ever.
Okay. So, but if you're a customer, a developer team, would you not still maybe want to invest that time?
Possibly. And so this is, okay. And so I just wanted to get that real world kind of guts and blood out of the way first. The ugly side of consulting. The other real part of it is that typically as a consultant, you are working on a slither of things. Very few instances do you go in and deliver a 6-month long thing where, especially as a developer, where you're developing on something for 6 months and doing enough work to implement a number of patterns. Okay.
Right. Okay.
You have to, if you look at the Salesforce kind of split of organizations and what they're using, most organizations are using most things out of the box, and they've got a bunch of customization around flow and things like that. Larger enterprise customers, hey Gear, thank you for joining us. I'm going to pronounce that as Gear from Norway. But everyone else, let us know where you're coming from. And if I've mispronounced your name, Gear, I apologize for my terrible Britishism. As a consultant, you're trying to get these things done, and you're very rarely brought in to say, we're going to build out this org's infrastructure for the next 12 months, where all of these things matter as much, because businesses change rapidly. Hey, Josh, as well, from New Zealand, Apex Astro. These things change rapidly. So most businesses have a change in their requirements within 12 weeks. Most businesses have a change in their requirements, I can tell you, within about 12 days from my experience. But, realistically, things change rapidly.
Right.
You want to build stuff as much as you can using clicks.code because it is easier to change and manipulate and update than it is with code. And you're trying to stick as close to the standard Salesforce as possible without deviating from that, because it's then much easier for another person to come and pick up. And so those are some of the reasons why you don't necessarily want to go implementing all these broad patterns. Another good example is, depending upon your support contract and things with customers, depends upon what you're going to be on the hook for in the future. So if you're on the hook for supporting something for the next 12 months or whatever, you're trying to minimize the footprint of things that are going to cause errors, have problems, etc., etc. And you're therefore going to try and get things sorted. You might be one of about 4 or 5 teams also all working in that instance on their separate pieces. And very rarely is there an agreement and a coordination in place.
This is how we're going to do it or whatever. Yeah.
And when that does happen, it works wonderfully. And I've worked in organizations where I've driven some of that, large organizations where I've had the ability to do that. But if I'm working in an organization where, so a good example is there is a group that I've worked with. I went in there, I've been working with them for a number of years. They have a trigger pattern because we have 3 triggers. That's it, 3 triggers. They do not
So
have a
trigger
selector.
pattern, not a full-fledged framework.
Yes, they have the basic like the basic handler pattern that we've used,
Right.
but like
Okay. Yeah.
not one that has feature flags and everything else. They've got the
Sure.
basic stuff there just to make it easy. But they don't have a selector layer or anything like that because there's only about 7 queries in across those triggers across different objects, and so I'd be adding more code than needed to do the simple thing. And so there is just kind of this whole pragmatism around it, and so I tend not to use them because a lot of my work has been consulting work where you are focused on the specific things. For another consultant coming in, they want to be able to understand quickly and easily what's going on and what's in there, and it's much easier to do that. And you keep it in a contained framework where you're not leaking out across the orgers to other bits.
You mean to not have the external library? Paul's frozen.
Yes. No. I'm still here. I can see you.
Back. Yeah. So, and I totally appreciate that. Where I am, if I'm a consultant, I'm one in a chain of what could be an infinite number of other developers that are in there, and so kind of making the smallest amount of perturbation on what does just generic plain old Apex look like makes it in fact easier to maintain. You might think like, this SOQL Lib, like it's a great, the Fluent API is, intuitive and blah, blah, blah. But if that next person has never used it, then you're basically forcing them to spend the time to understand and read the documentation and learn how to use that, as opposed to just write a SOQL query and get a list of contacts or something.
Completely. The other big thing I would say that historically has happened with a lot of selector patterns, and what I quite like about this implementation that we'll see, is that it doesn't retrieve everything. I have got into more than one org where someone's built a selector pattern and said, look how good this is. It gets you all the fields, and it does all this dynamic Apex and everything else to retrieve this data, and then
you need like one field.
You need one field from, and this is kind of another big part for me, is that I am a hill I will die on, is that people don't, and I put a little kind of post about this on LinkedIn the other week. People don't test enough as a user. Like if you're doing a dynamic Apex query to get metadata information, that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, some poor person is sat there at their desk, tapping their fingers, thinking, "Why is my Salesforce not working?" So and I say this to a lot of people: is that Salesforce is a really good product, but your Salesforce implementation can be really bad. And if your Salesforce is slow, which a lot of people complain about, a lot of people whinge about, I will almost guarantee it is not it's not Salesforce. It is that you have something going on in the background that's slow and unwieldy in doing. And it could be that it's a double ledger entry system, which is churning through thousands and thousands of transactions. But it also could be that you've got if you've got a simple, let's take it. I'm going to go a bit old school with the example here, but let's say we had a Visualforce page, Pete, where we were just trying to render out 3 objects on a PDF. So it would be like we're going to render out the opportunity, the line items, and we're going to render out something that's kind of tangentially related, but we couldn't get in a single query, if you know what I mean. So we'd have to write.
Like you can't get in
so we'd have to like an order number or like whatever it might be.
Or like you just needed a contact, but not the account.
Exactly right. And so we're going to have to get this information, and so you need what I'm getting at here is you need an Apex extension for it. Now that could be the only piece of code you're writing in the org. Like, you don't need a selector layer. You don't need to mock the database. You don't need to stub things. You don't need to do all of this architecture on top. You need to go in there, write a 2-line query, and press start and get it returned to be happy with it, and get delivering some value. So that's kind of. I just wanted to share a little bit around why, and the reason I wanted to share this in particular is I am not anti this pattern. I use it in some other place. I use it in my products because I know the data structure and how my products work and things like that, but I don't use it in a lot of my consulting setups because of a lot of the reasons I've just said.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a lot of stuff that's posted out by people on LinkedIn and other things where you get told you should be doing X, but without the consequences of when it's good, when it's bad, when it's good, when it's bad. And dynamic stuff is always slower than non-dynamic stuff, funnily enough. Like, so
I think
you need to do
this could be like a conference talk, Paul. Like quit shitting on your Apex code or something like that.
There's so again, I just to kind of like a little side story here. One of the most interesting things that people never realize about FFlib. So FFlib, I was lucky enough to be around when it was first being written. Like I contributed little bits, very minor, teeny tiny little bits to it, but I was there being like, hey.
So you're saying you wrote FFlib, Paul?
Yeah, I did it. Andy did nothing. No, I'm joking. Like, there's some really, really smart people, including Andy, that like put a lot of brain power into doing it, and it made our product development at that organization at a time when Salesforce was far less feature rich, like much
well, and so much more limited. Like I remember when I first started, you had to be very manual about checking that you weren't going to go beyond limits on triggers, and like there was some really like things that we take for granted that it just does for us. Like it didn't.
Yeah, and so when Andy first fully open sourced the FFlib and the Apex Enterprise patterns, he actually put together a slideshow, and he shared this with me the other day. So I'm going to share something from November 2013. That,
nice.
But this is what people don't realize is actually.
Okay, while Paul's bringing that up, if you use the selector pattern, some of you folks out there in your work, or a library kind of along the lines of that, let us know, and let us know which library it is. We'd like to hear.
Yeah, and please, if you completely disagree with me and think I'm just some sort of moron, please let us know in the comments below. I mean, please let me know why. Don't just say you're a moron. But I'd love to know specifics, because and I'm not saying I'm right on this. I think I'm just saying there's a lot of nuance. So this slide here is from Andy's presentation back in 2013. And as you can see here, it's when a separation of concerns and don't repeat yourself appropriate. And it's a really interesting guide of how many developers and to when these things. So, like, if you're just using standard UI, simple triggers, no API, if you're doing a little bit of stuff on there, it's worth considering. It's not worth considering, and there's definite benefits. And this slide has been lost to a lot of people, where it's like, people will lose that nuance, and everyone assumes that they're in the same boat where there's a team of 12 of them doing something. Whereas what it often is you go, you often, particularly on the consultant side, you often go and work in organizations where there are 0 developers. You are the developer going in to help them. I've worked with a charity where there was one full-time person, and that was because he'd set the charity up. Everyone else was part-time volunteers, and they got the free licenses, and they wanted to do just some gift aid stuff and things like that. And so every line of code I wrote meant that they would have to spend money supporting it. So, you do things in the leanest and meanest way possible to help people out. So, with all of this in there, we also mentioned Fluent API. So, Pete, you started talking about Fluent APIs. What is a Fluent API, and why is it wonderful?
Well, clearly I don't know, because I was calling the selector pattern Fluent. But I think the best way I can talk about it is actually maybe bringing up some of the SOQL Lib documentation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So let me do that.
Pete's doing that. Hello to everyone who's been joining us throughout whilst you've been listening to me witter away and blather on. Thank you so much for joining. Whilst Pete's doing that, remember, as ever, if you're not subscribed to Cloudbytes TV, to do so both on LinkedIn and on YouTube, and let us know where you're watching from, and say hello.
Okay, where's my mouse?
Interesting.
My mouse is. Oh, there we go.
This is a great comment, by the way. Yes, Ravi. So thank you, Ravi, for this one as well. Unsure if this is an org-specific issue, but cascading trigger execution and how code is organized based upon that, in general bulkification, adding layers can sometimes lead to queries and loops due to the reuse of code. This is another great thing to bear in mind, and is another great point as to why some of these patterns you have to be aware that you're using and make others aware that you're using them. So if you have, let's say we have our selector pattern being called in a trigger context, and it's called from that trigger is executed from another trigger and from another DML operation in that cascade, you can then end up with things occurring in loops that you don't really want to be in loops. That's a really important point. So thank you, Ravi, for sharing that. A really good point as well as to why some of these things can be problematic. So,
okay, speaking of problematic, that would be my laptop at the moment. My mouse has like crawled, like slowed to a crawl, and I'm having trouble controlling things. Oops. See,
right, would you like me
I didn't mean to do that.
Do you want me to bring up the screen on my end?
Yeah, why don't you do
SOQL?
Because I sort of can't do, like, literally, I don't know what happened. I might even have
He hasn't been feeding his mice.
Apparently not.
So do you want the getting started page or do you want the home page?
Yeah, getting started is good, actually, because I think that's a really good example. Yeah, so that second little code block, I think is probably so SOQL Lib has this SOQL class, I would guess, and sort of attached onto that there are a bunch of, it looks like there's a static method of which then that gives us the S object type, and then there's a set of APIs that you can kind of call from there. And so in this instance, like, it just shows a with, which is essentially your select clause for your SOQL query. And then .toList basically goes and executes the query ostensibly. Or maybe not. Like, I'm not sure how it's implemented.
No,
it may be
correct.
maybe toList even just sort of queues it up to go and do it later. I don't know. So
that's bang on. Yeah, this is what's nice about it. So toList just returns the list of accounts. So
and the thing I mentioned earlier was that it feels a lot like writing functional programming code. You know, there are certain functional languages like Elixir and Clojure that have kind of this almost pipe-like operator where you can just sort of stack one functional call on top of another on top of another. This is more like functional JavaScript, I would say, is kind of what it feels like, than some other functional languages maybe. But that idea that, you know, probably what happens is, you know, when you call of, it's returning some object, and with probably returns like the same object with but with decorated with a bit more. And then if you look at the next one, where equal, again, same object but decorated a bit more. And then finally to object or to list, like, that's actually going to go and do something.
That's hang on. So a fluent API is one, and let's just play quickly. So let's just say that we had, let's just say we've got this SOQL class, right? My query equals new. So this is how you might do things otherwise, right? And I'm just going to zoom in. Is that big enough for everyone to read? Okay, yeah, that's okay. So you might have like this my query builder class, okay, and you say that's a new SOQL query, and then you might do my query builder dot add fields. Add field to selection to select. Let's do it like that. And you might say you have ID, name, oops, and then description. Okay, so we might have something like that. And we'll probably need to put our closing single quotes correctly so this shows up nicely. So you might do something like that, right? And that the idea here is that this is occurring on this object instance, okay? But you're kind of just calling all these methods. So you could then do my query builder dot add where clause. Whoops. Clause, and let's just say like name equals, and then I know Bob. Okay, so you could go through and do these things, and this is kind of the sort of code that we're very used to seeing, right? The problem is that this reads terribly. If I showed this, flash this up on the screen to Peter and was like, Peter, what's this doing? You're like, well, so my query builder is probably building a query. I'm adding these. It's not intuitive. Whereas what this is doing is saying that so if we do SOQL dot, and then we're saying, what was the method? Sorry, with. And so this is, oh yeah, so sorry. Well, let's just assume it. Let's just assume it knows. Oh, actually, yeah. Let's do my query builder dot set target set from. Yeah. Okay. Let's just say we were doing that, and that's going to go away and build out select ID name description from account where name equals Bob. Okay. Nice and easy. This this kind of syntax instead, however, is going to say do a SOQL, and we're going to say of. So we're going to do a query of our account. And this uses the S object type, so I'm just going to use that quickly. And then it's going to say with the fields. Okay, so with the fields, and we're going to say, okay, account ID, account name, account description. And then we can say, okay, where equals to. And we could say, account dot name and Bob. And each of these methods, if we had a look at the definition in our SOQL class, so if we just said, and I'll show you this in a minute, then we would have a static SOQL of that would take in S object type. Type's probably a bad keyword there, and then we do our stuff, but we would then return this. So we return our instance in effect. And so what that means is that you can build out these nice chained commands that work together nicely. And yeah, it is, I think, the Fluent API and the builder pattern are very closely aligned on this. But it makes it really easy for you to build these things where it's much easier for you to read. So you can say, I'm having a SOQL query of the account object with these fields involved where this is my where clause. And then you just have, let's just say the to list. And that to list is the only one. It's a static list subject. And this would then actually run the query, and then it would say return list account, which obviously, as we know, is an instance of an S object. So yeah, so that's how it works, and that's what a Fluent API is it kind of tails things together nicely. It's really, really useful for working with stuff in a more readable manner. So that all makes sense?
Yeah. So Ravi has a question. How do you represent relationship fields and one-to-many relationships? So I think that's a great question. I think as we go through SOQL Lib a bit further, we will see the APIs for that. The good news is it's all documented. I don't know if we've posted the link to the SOQL Lib website yet, but if I can get my laptop to stop barfing, I'll try and help out a little bit. There we go. So we'll definitely get to that, Ravi. And you said you had a second question, so pop that in there whenever you're ready to hit us with that.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit through what we're going to try and do today. So I've already, in previous episodes, Peter and I have built out a trigger framework for us to use. So we've it's a great comment, that gear. We'll come to that in a second. So we have seen it. So one of the things that we did was we built out a trigger handler, didn't we, Peter, to work with going away and counting out the number of tasks we've got. So I've included that into this version of our branch. You can find this on GitHub and go through. But if we have a look here, we have a basic trigger handler. More importantly, we have our task trigger handler that does a bunch of stuff. And it goes away And effectively, whenever we insert an account, insert some tasks, it updates the related account, if it is related to an account, to go away and give us the correct number of open tasks on there. So if we create a task, close a task, it updates. Okay, nice and simple. And so what I thought, I've also got the SOQL class that we mentioned here. And as you can see, I didn't even look at this earlier on. But I'm going to just show you a couple of things. If we go right to the top here, it's a big old class. It has this kind of interface selector, which returns our queryable. But you can see here that our queryable has all these with options, with a list of SObject fields, etc., and all of them return the queryable instance itself, okay? And so they're all returning exactly the same thing. And if we go, and then we've got subqueries, so we'll come through to those later on. And we have filters and filter groups and so on and so forth. And if we come down to the bottom, I was looking at toList.
And is this just a unlocked package version of this that you use?
So the ways you can deploy this in the documentation, you can either use the magic deploy to Salesforce button, again, another Andy Fawcett creation, or you can I've just taken the code and copied it manually from GitHub because it's two classes. It was pretty quick and easy to do. But yeah, that toList that I mentioned earlier on, you can see here it just drops out a list of SObjects like we thought. So what I thought we would do to start off here is let's try, and we have two queries here. Let's start by just getting familiar with it with a very simple query in this one, and just feeling it out and seeing how it works for us. Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Cool. So first thing we're going to want to do is let's have a look at creating our selector. So we're going to go follow the documentation here. It recommends we just build our own, build it using inheritance. And as you can see here, this is a SOQL one. This is an account one, and we're working with accounts. So I'm actually just going to copy this because I think it's going to be useful for us. So I'm going to create a new class. A new class. And I'm going to call it account selector. You can name them as you wish, but I'm just going to use this naming convention. And I'm going to cheat and stand on the shoulders of giants and paste this in. And then I'm just going to relabel stuff because it makes it easy for me. So there you go. So what we've got here is just an example. And what it needs to do, because it implements SOQL.selector, is it needs to return certain things. So it's going to call the super option here. It turns the account. It's got the private selector here that does that. It's got your generic query option there. And you've got some of your options like by parent ID and so on and so forth. Okay. So that's the real basic option here. And as you can see in this example controller, you can then use that to start to build things out. So why don't we go ahead and just do something to all that. So I'm just going to trim out some of this.
So I think I'm going to throw in the towel, and I am going to just exercise the nuclear option and be right back in like 5 minutes.
You go for it. You do that while I do some of the basics here. Cool.
All right.
No worries. So Peter's going to drop off for a second. So we have our basic setup here, and let's just save that. And what we're going to do is in our task trigger handler here, we're going to just copy that down, and we're going to say accounts to update is now going to equal to account selector. So if we call account selector, you can see there. Sorry, you can see here in this instance. So it's account selector.query. So that's going to return us our new account selector. Okay. And then we can just start using all the methods we're inheriting from elsewhere. So we can start to say, for example, like we want withs and where. So in our query here, we want the ID and we want the number of open tasks dot with, and we're just going to pass in account dot number of open tasks. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to format this a little better so that it looks a little easier to read. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And then we have our where clause where ID is in account IDs. And what we can do is we can have a look to see where our where clauses are. So if we go for our basic features over here, we have our binding, we have our different selectors. So let's have a look if we can find a selector that has an in example. Set limits, minimal fields, FSL control. I suppose there's one in here, is there? Equal to, if not, we'll have a look through our, here you go, here's the public API, filter group, inner join, count, average. We'll use some of these later on. And so we're probably going to use a filter group, I think. It's what we're going to want to do. Yeah. So let's go back in here. Let's go back to our previous page here. So we're going to do .where. And if we go back to our SOQL class, we can have a quick look at the API to see what we've got here. So we've got here filter.id.isInRecord. So you can see this is using the filter API. If I go back up to the top, I think filter, I'll go back over here to the design. This is probably where it's going to be useful for filter. So SOQL.filter creates a filter. So we're going to do filter. Okay, so we've got our filter. And if I go back over to here, we can see, what was that filter I was using a second ago? What was it? Sure, I just had it a second ago. It's going to show up every instance of string. What was it on the filter class? We just had it on the screen 2 seconds ago and I've lost it. We'll find it, the definition in a sec. Here we go, filter group, filters, filter, okay. ID, name, is null, is true. So we want is in, and then we want an iterable here. So filter, whoops, sorry, on the screen, where SOQL filter dot is in. And we want to have our account IDs. Just check, oops, sorry, I keep on switching back into the wrong place. Is in, and that's going to be our account IDs iterable there. I think Peter's back in the room with us. Hey, Peter.
Yes, I am back.
Cool. So what we're going to do is and we need to add the with. So it should be with. Also dot with. It'll be account dot. Excuse me. ID dot is in, and that should be interesting. That it's saying why is dot where not working. Go back here. Have I used the wrong syntax? Probably. Where are? I think it might be able to be. There you go. Yeah.
So if I can,
and then we want to do .to list.
Yeah, once you've done that.
Cool. Sorry. Yep.
So at this point, you created your trigger handler, right? And we've not wired this into the trigger because that's the existing trigger that we did in the previous exercise, right? One of the previous live streams.
Yes. Yeah. So it's just using our existing setup from the previous live streams.
Right. Okay.
Joe, what? It's not a class. Not like that here. Should be IDs. If I could type properly. So yeah. So what I've done, Pete, is I've just taken our existing task trigger from a task trigger handler from the previous one, and I'm just replacing this query here, and it's now deployed nicely. And part of the reason I've done that is, okay, I know that I stumbled over it a little bit, but this has been not too hard to replace there. And more importantly, guess what we have that we can now run to check?
A test.
We do have a test. So if I now run just our top one, just for brevity and speed, this should run okay, and it has passed. And you can see, therefore, that what we've done in swapping that out for the selector hasn't made any difference. Things have still run. I'm just going to run all tests because I think they're pretty quick to run on this one. Just hide that, and it's going to pop back up. Oh, and we have actually got some failures. Ooh. Start state incorrect number of that is a pool error, and I can figure that one out later. I'll make a note. So I'm just going to make a note for myself. I recreated the field and didn't set it to default to 0, and so it's defaulting to null.
Okay. Actually, in the org itself, you mean?
Yeah.
Like, is that an org configuration? I got it.
Yeah, I recreated the field manually and didn't copy it across. I didn't deploy it across because I was feeling helpful and shouldn't have done.
And so just to walk through this again, so you created the account selector, and that is both extending SOQL.
Yep.
So that's interesting. So like that's like as far as that pattern, and then you're implementing SOQL.selector, and that's actually what makes this a selector class.
Yes.
And
that's
then
actually where the guts are.
There's sort of that interface presumably forces you to implement the query method, right?
We can have a look. So let's have a quick look. So the SOQL, so the selector interface just has a single method, as you say,
that returns
query.
a queryable.
Yeah. So we can just have that. So the account selector is so where this is extending SOQL. SOQL itself is implementing
queryable. Got it.
Okay.
So that kind of follows the chain of all the inheritance that makes all of that possible. And then
we could remove. Sorry, I was going to say we could remove most of this. Like, I mean, we're using system modem without sharing, and it's defaulting to having it have ID and account, ID and name on there. We wouldn't have to do those if we didn't want to.
Right.
So we could, if we wanted to, just do that, and it would effectively do the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then rerun that
cool.
first test. So nice and easy for us. So again, I'm just going to quickly run that top test as it's a nice little one for us to see. And you can see that ran fine and dandy. So we've got our selector. We've got a very nice little default setup for us, and we have our trigger now working still. So,
and actually, I just want to kind of talk through this a little bit more, just very briefly. This hasn't been a ton of work. This isn't onerous. It's not going to take you a week to do or anything like that. But if your goal was, literally maybe adding this one query that you have up now in the task trigger handler, for example, to go through the work of, because you've already done some pre-work, you've actually installed the package to make sure that package is going to install properly if you're using Scratch orgs, for example. And so then you're going back and making sure that your Scratch org config file is all set up to install that package as well. It's all of that extra work that you're talking about, where if you're a consultant and your job is to just get that query working, why wouldn't you just go get the query working?
Well, it's also, as a consultant, I mean, there's definitely that part. The other part is, as a consultant, I have 2 queries in this. If this was the thing I was asked to do, and I have 2 queries in there, adding in the account selector for someone else to go and retrieve those specific set of accounts is not useful for me. Is people might laugh and say, "Oh yes, but what about when someone asks for another thing like that?" That's where that kind of matrix that I showed you a minute ago, the one that was in Andy's slides, and and just in general, that we need to think about is where that pragmatism falls in. Like,
Yeah,
it's all well
100%.
and good saying that we have principles on things, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
like, there's no, and like, Gear made an interesting point here, just about it's fun working both in core and in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I assume with Marketing Cloud there we mean what I'm going to call exact target, but is it engagement? I think is the correct name. In one of them, there are a lot of principles and have very opinionated discussions on LinkedIn, which I'm assuming must be core. In the other, there seems to be no principles and less opinions, and I assume that's Marketing Cloud. And
I
yes,
assume so too.
yeah, I as someone who also does a bit of work with Marketing Cloud, I find finding out information on Marketing Cloud like so difficult. Like,
But
I like. Go on, sorry.
there's still no like sandbox version of Marketing Cloud, is there?
No.
Yeah, and like so, there's no ability for there to be even kind of an open source movement. Everybody who has access to Marketing Cloud as a developer has like a full license, and so it makes it very difficult to build a grassroots movement socially.
Exactly. Oh yeah, and it just makes it difficult for people to want to play and tinker and share things. That's
Totally.
That's where a lot of cool things come from. Is people messing around and playing. So should we have a look at this second query then to see if we can do this one, which is our aggregate query? Because
that's really interesting.
So yeah, do you want to? I mean, do you want?
I don't mind. I don't mind taking a stab at it. Sure. I mean,
cool. So
without having really watched what you did before, although I do have some example. I mean, this is from task. So we need to create another selector class, right?
No. Yes. Oh, yes, because we're selecting from tasks. So yes, so task, we do. Yeah. While you do that, I'm just going to find the.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share. Hopefully this doesn't blow up again. It should be okay. I think what happened was I had another account logged into this laptop, and
so this will be in the design.
That kind of blew me up. Anytime you want to pop mine up on the screen,
yeah, sorry.
Go ahead and do that. And I'll have a go with this.
Move me. Add you. Done.
Apex.
You might want to zoom in a touch as well.
Oh, thank you. That's a good idea. That's it.
So I really like I'm looking through the documentation here as to how we would do this, and I absolutely love how they set this up. So those who aren't, I don't know if Piotr and others will be watching, or if they're going to watch the catch up. But if so, the guys at folks at Beyond the Cloud, and Piotr who works there have done a great job with this. So
how's that? Cool. That's probably slightly better there.
Yeah, now it works.
Now I'm having a weird thing going on where it's not, because I'm in live share, it's not giving me the option to create an Apex class, which I could probably do in the command line, but maybe if you just give me a help on that, that would be useful.
I'll give you a leg up on that one, don't worry.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There you go, cool.
And for those who don't know, Paul and I are using this live share feature of Visual Studio Code. I don't know if it's a feature or a plugin, but
it's a standard out of the box feature.
Yeah. Okay. And so there should be now a task selector. I bet I have to refresh. Up here. Yeah. Boom.
Wait, I say that. Sorry, it is a plugin. It's from Microsoft though, who own everything.
Yeah, I thought it was Microsoft's bit of software. So okay, so you know what? I'm just gonna do what every great developer does, and pretty much copy. I think that's all the accounts, and boom, it's one of my favorite features.
Yeah.
Okay, so inherited sharing class task extends SOQL, implements SOQL collector. That should all be good. I'm implementing, and that is my class called task selector. So I'm implementing query to return a queryable, which is by virtue of that extending SOQL, and it's returning itself. Okay, good. I'm calling super task S object type and then system mode without sharing. So yeah, so all that should be good, I think, to make that work. Yeah.
Yep, looks good to
All
me.
right. Easy copy and paste job there. Now this is going to be a lot more interesting, and I may have lost the page with SOQL Lib, but I'm guessing there's going to be some information on how to building.
If you if you go onto the design tab,
okay, yeah.
and then if you scroll down a bit,
Is there some stuff on?
Yeah, there's no, you've gone past it. It's right near the top, like because it's so baked in. It's brilliant. So if you have a look there, if you have a look at that second block from like line 25 down.
Okay, so there's count, there's average, count distinct, min, max, sum. There's grouping. I'm guessing that's group by.
Yep. And there's also, if you have a look, the wonderful option to give it a field alias, like we've been doing for our.
Is that in
the?
Oh, count? Yeah. Okay, so that's overloaded, so that we can provide an alias. Okay. Well, let me see if I can fumble my way through that. And I'm just gonna start by doing that, just so I sort of have a reference to the original. Yeah. Okay, so task accounts. Oh, I see. Now, in the previous example, you created the list first, and then you actually used the selector class. Is there a reason that was that left over from how we did it previously? And there was a
I literally just kind of if you look on line 54, I just commented out our original one.
Right. So that was okay. I'll just leave that as is then.
Yeah.
Okay. So this would be task selector dot of no dot query.
Yeah.
Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, it's not really lining that up well, is it? Dot.
No.
Okay, so with would normally be my where clause, right?
No, with is your select clause.
Sorry, select clause. Yeah, that's actually what I meant to say. But in my case, if I go back here, so much fun fumbling around. All the rest of the people have seen it, so I'm just kind of like feeling my way through. So, okay, so with is if I want any actual fields, which I may still need in my aggregate query, but any of the aggregate functions, those are their own method to execute. And going back here, so I need to do an aggregate on ID, and then I also need what ID with alias. I wonder if it cares like what order I do it in. It must like construct it in the order that you call it in. So I'll do count first. And then we'll say that's going to be task.id, comma, and we're calling that task count. And do I have that right, that second parameter is a string?
It is, but there's no space in it.
Thank you. You mean no space between task and count?
Yeah, you're on line 64. You can see it saying.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, good. All right. Dot with, and then this one will be, all right, what ID? And again, alias is count ID. All right. And so for the where clause, so where are SOQL filter with, oh, interesting. Okay. I think I may need to look up so how to do an and, but I'll fudge my way through here.
I think it's
where
filter groups is what you're trying to do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you want to do a dot where, and then in that or dot where are, I think it would be.
Yeah.
And then in there you want to create a filter group. So SOQL.filter group. You see, if you ever look at the one where I've done SOQL.filter, it's basically the same thing, but you're just adding filter groups to the filter.
Oh, interesting. Do they have like an example of that? I'd be sort of curious to see.
They do on the basic features page.
Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Where are SOQL.filterGroup.add? Okay.
And I assume by default, I'm guessing it's going to be the filter.
It's anding them together?
That would be my assumption.
That would be that's the best thing I can. Okay. All right. I'll just use that as a model and see how I get on. So where are SOQL.filter group? And then I do, which is that's a property, not a method. Okay.
Yeah, I had that error a minute ago. You missed me going, why is this not working earlier on?
Although, okay, well, sorry. Come back here. There we go. All right, so that's inside where are, not a dot where are. So SOQL dot filter group dot add. Oh, interesting. There's a dynamic condition and there's filter. I think I want filter, I assume.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Where are? Okay. And I think also, just to sort of I'm actually going to do this sort of outer bit now. So there'll be another dot add. And then here it'll be dot to list. I think we'll come.
You want the grouping as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll come back to that too. Okay, so where are filter SOQL dot filter dot width, and that's going to be is closed.
Yep.
Task dot is closed. Dot equals false. Is that right?
Yep.
And then same thing here, SOQL dot filter dot width. And so this will be task is deleted false, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you need to do the other filter for the account IDs as well. The what ID filter.
Oh, shoot.
Sorry.
No, yeah, it's a good point. Thank you. All right. I missed that. I feel like I have an extra.
No, you're cool. It's the colors match up. You're fine. Because it's the blue one for the filter group. Sorry, it's not blue one.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to also go ahead and do just that. And this will be task dot what ID.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is there an in function?
Yeah, it's actually on line 57. Dot is in.
Oh, is in?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
have
see.
to do the same. Yeah.
Oh yeah, is in, and that's going to be in count IDs. Okay, so where are SOQL filter group dot add what ID is in count IDs, task is closed false, is deleted false. Okay, and now that's all of my where grouping dot group by, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so.
And that as well. So is there a group by?
Yeah, I
Oh,
just
look at that.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lead source is an example there. And I'm just going to do what ID. So task dot what ID. I probably do talk to myself almost this much when I'm coding.
In IRL.
But I'm probably doing even more because of the actual thing. So thank you for that.
I think that's it. Looks good.
Yeah, and actually this should go away too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun. I mean, it's kind of cool. I do, again, it's sort of like you sort of have to learn what the library creator was thinking, but it does, it makes sense and it's fairly intuitive. And I think the thing I like about it is that it just uses the regular Apex autocomplete, as opposed to having for the language server to having to switch to SOQL and kind of sometimes get it right.
Occasionally.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Should we give that a try?
Yeah, do you want to say if you hit save, it should.
Yeah. And actually task selector also needs to be saved.
Yeah.
And you have a automatic deploy.
I've done it. So there is an error. What's the error? Oh yes, line 63. You've got an error.
Okay. Oh, so that needs to be task.what ID, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, just looking at the previous example. Save. Are you saving?
Yeah. Should be. Whee, success.
Sweet.
Go on, Pete. Run all the tests. See what happens.
Dare I?
Well, I'm hoping that I've task trigger _ test. It's you'll probably have to open that. I think it's open.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. Boom.
Oh. All right.
That's
I will run them for you.
Run it. Yeah.
Interestingly, it doesn't allow you to see. Hopefully, it'll show you the output. If you change the weird on the output, does it not show it for you? If you go to the output,
it doesn't. I would have thought, but
change the filter to you've got tasks. You want it to be Apex.
Oh. Might have missed it.
I can rerun them if you want. Just rerun it and see if it comes back up for you. Just churning away still. They all passed last time, which was good news.
That's exciting.
Oh, I didn't pop up on your output. Oh well,
no.
They have all passed. People will have to trust me.
Debug I'm not. Console, terminal.
1 minute. Right to output. It's not allowed to choose.
That's fine. Let's not worry too much about how live share works. All right, cool. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, nice and easy. So yeah, so we now have that working. Just to show people there, you go, look, it's live, it's real.
Nice.
Sorry, I've kicked you off by accident, Pete. I was just trying to add
Oh,
myself
did
to
you?
which. Yeah, I think it's kicked your thing off. I fixed the default value there. So yeah, let me remove myself from stage. I think it's kicked your.
Oh no, well
sharing.
I stopped sharing my screen, so
That was just
yeah,
very convenient timing then.
yeah, that might have been me.
So nice. Cool. So we've done our basic task trigger handler and task selector, which is nice. I'm just going to go in and commit this so that we have it against the repository. For anyone who wants to find it later, if you go to yep. So Ravi, thanks for joining us, Ravi. Ravi's got a drop, but if anyone is wanting to watch the recordings, the best place to watch them will be on YouTube. If you go to youtube.com/cloudbytestv, which is linked to at the top here, you will find this recording and all of the others available as well. I think it does it on LinkedIn Live, but the YouTube link is much, much easier to work with.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Ravi.
Cool. So just hide that comment. So so that's quite cool. We've done that, and I think it looks really nice and sleek for us as well.
I really like that Fluent API structure. Yeah.
Well, so one of the interesting things that I noticed whilst I was while you were doing some of that typing is this. Let me share my screen again. Is the word functional programming.
Nice.
So so it uses a concept called Apex functional programming, which is a linked to page, which I have apparently is an invalid certificate, so it's no longer a place.
Interesting.
But yeah, we should. I don't know if Piotr or any of the team are working. It'd be great to know who set up that idea originally.
Well, so I know that Aidan Harding worked on a functional library for writing Apex code in his time at Nebula Consulting. So I can go see if I can find something related to that.
Yeah, I wonder where it is, because I'm just wondering if it's.
And just for folks to be aware of, not to be confused with Nebula Logger.
No, it is different. Yeah, it is. Who is this? It's from a different person. It's from Ilya Pavlik, who is the person who's got an Apex functional program, and that has the list here with the documentation. But the idea is that you provide these items that don't leak. So that's quite cool. So yeah, the concept being that you provide, you put the logic and everything in there and encapsulate only the methods via interfaces. So that's quite a nice, handy thing to look at.
Yeah, and functional programming, I really appreciate it from the standpoint of, you sort of have this thing, and like a functional call will take that and return something new, basically, but it's always like you're not mutating the same object. Each thing in functional programming is meant to be immutable. And it really clicked for me in learning a little bit about the Phoenix framework, which is Elixir's web framework, and how they sort of view the HTTP request like as that whole cycle as like a big function call. And so each step along the way, there's a slight, mutation of, the data from the initial request landing at the application server to, reading the data out of the HTTP headers to, blah, 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 all the way down the path until you start to, marshal up the content and, put your response headers on, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you get something out of that. And like, I never thought of an HTTP request as kind of a functional call before, but I thought that was pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen an Apex library that does a similar thing for one of the HTTP builder libraries, where I always find it slightly strange with the Salesforce HTTP classes. You kind of create this HTTP class, then you create a request class, and then you send the request. And I'm always like, well, what else am I going to send? Like, it's going to be that HTTP method has such a strong In fact, I think it's something Pablo talks about in his Clean Apex code book, how like tightly bound they are together. Whereas like, I think something like a Fluent API for that, where it's like, okay, I'm going to create a new request with this method, with these, I'm going to add this header parameter, I'm going to add this header parameter, I'm going to add this header parameter, I'm going to add this body. You know what I mean? Things like that make it quite nice. So we have about half an hour left in the stream, and I just want to talk through the kind of example we have for our what's what I'm looking for, our e-commerce processor. And do a little bit of, let's see if we can do some stuff on that. So
yeah, sounds good.
So what I think we could do is I'm going to take a bit of a test-driven approach here for this. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to create a contact selector. Okay. And I'm just going to replace Control-Shift-F. Not Control-Shift-F, I meant Control that F. Whoa. Okay, apparently having live share changes what that does as well. Interesting. What's the find and replace? Weird. Okay.
Getting hotkey clashes.
Yeah, always fun. Right, so we have our contact selector looking great. So if we go back into our e-commerce order processor and our test, let's write a little test where what we're going to do. So test. And this is a terribly named test, so please give your names for tests better names than test process correctly.
A test method name isn't a test method name unless it's at least 50 characters.
Exactly. Cool. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do so e-commerce order processor dot e-commerce order. And I'd like to be clear as well. One of the things I would suggest is, having e-commerce order and e-commerce order line item in the e-commerce order processor is not a great idea either. There's lots of things that can be improved on this. We're all aware, but it's just easier to show on screen than having to jump through 10 classes. Okay, so this test order is going to be get test order. And so what we want to do is we want to call e-commerce order processor, and is that static? Just make it static for now. Do I want it static? No. Let's leave that as it is. Processor. Whoa, mean that. And we're going to do processor process order and call that test order. Right. And so what we want to do is we effectively want to do contact May. So our test contact should be called made up. A wonderful name for any test contact. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our contact May is going to be our contact selector dot query, and then we're going to do dot. And so let's just go back to our task one. Oops, task trigger handler here. And so then we're going to do our with, our where are, and our to list. And I think we're trying to retrieve one so we can add a limit clause as well. But if we go back over here, so query dot with, and we want contact dot first name, contact dot last name, contact dot email, and equals. 1 minute, I'm looking for. And our test email is may.example.com. And then let's just have a quick look at SOQL just to see if there's a way of turning a single item. Set limit.
Yeah, there you go.
And is there, well, I suppose what I'm actually really looking for is there a way of returning a single record? Or is it always going to return a list of records dot?
Oh, that's interesting.
Where's toList gone? There's toList. So maybe I just need to do toList and then get the first. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll do that for.
Oh, yeah. Is there like a toS object instead?
There's not. This is what I was just looking for. So there's
I thought I saw one.
Two values of two. Oh, yeah, two objects. Sorry, you're right. Ignore me. Bingo. Right. And so
I imagine if you weren't using set limit, it would just fail or produce an error. But
it should. I mean, we're in a test context where there's zero other contacts.
I don't know, not necessarily, because you might be just querying based on ID, in which case you could do toObject, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're going to test is we're just going to do here that may dot. So expect may and there we go. Right. So this should be a valid test, whether it actually runs. Why is may not true? Ah. Interesting. Have we not done that in the contact side? So it should come back.
That's a good question.
Weirdly, we didn't have to do that before, but we are having to do it here.
Yeah, account selector didn't need that for some reason.
Interesting. I wonder if it's just because it's a single record. Anyway, we're expecting this test to fail, right? Because we're not actually doing anything. Perfect. We have a failing test. So I think what we just want to try and show here for people is the first implementation step we're going to do is create a new contact if one exists. So we want to do list contact existing cons. Dot. What else? What do we need from it? Dot with probably just the ID. And we want a contact. So it's quite, once you've got into the rhythm of this, it is pretty easy to do. Dot equal. And it is going to be order dot email. Oops.
I'm starting to, like, the with syntax was, I don't know, it wasn't sinking in, but I'm starting to get the rationale behind that a little bit, maybe.
So yeah, and so what we're going to do here is very simply say if existing contacts dot size equals 0, account ACC equals reorder dot first name plus cool. And then, I could be using person accounts here as a model instead of just creating an account and a contact setup. But, again, some minor liberty taken for the purpose of.
Right, because this account now has a person's name in the name field, right?
Exactly,
yeah.
Con dot first name and I could add in all the other information, but I'm just con dot account ID. See that ID. Cool. And that should insert our account and contact for us. But this is just quite, again, saying about it's becoming easier to do and then stumbling over your basic select clause. So, yeah, that should now pass for us, hopefully. Yes. I'm a development god.
Nice.
So, yeah, I wanted to show, I was hoping we might get to do a bit more of this today, but obviously we're coming up to time and things. So I might take this away as some homework just to kind of tidy up and show a couple of examples of what we would do if we find things and how we do that. But I think this would actually be the only query we'd probably be making. We want to do some order by stuff on there maybe, but I suppose this, we're going to need to query products and price books and things as well. So there's a bunch of stuff like that to do.
Yeah, the other thing about this that I'm thinking about is as much as I like it, I feel like there's, you're automatically adding apex bloat.
Yeah, so
because every single S object that you want to implement in the selector pattern at the very least needs that little bit of boilerplate code that declares itself as a selector class. There's no way to just use the SOQL library and query without that, is there?
Not with the library, no. And this is going back to kind of what I was saying earlier about the dichotomy of product versus consultancy. One of the, aside from that, one of the reasons that I am, one of the reasons that I do not use as many patterns as some people might feel I would do or should do, is because, and like when I say about mocking frameworks, stubbing frameworks, things like that, is because I am anti that adding extra code for the need of it. Is that I feel this is being a bit of an Andy Fawcett heavy episode, but he was chatting to me the other day, and one of the things he mentioned was the best thing you could do as a Salesforce developer is not write code. And that's it. Like the best feature you can give in Salesforce is the one where you create a formula field rather than going and writing some code, because formula fields cost nothing.
If you don't need to add the complexity, don't add the complexity. I think
exactly.
It's interesting because what I used to teach the Dev 401 training, and that was the training back in, this is 15 years ago when I started. That it was 3.5 days of all of the non-coding stuff to build an application. So custom objects, user interface for that, what is it? Record types and page layouts. So you could like have multiple page layouts for the same S object before we had, what's the new thing you can do with Flow Builder now?
Layouts.
Yeah, dynamic layouts or, yeah. So like all of that stuff. We went through all the permission stuff, built out a role hierarchy, and we went through formula fields, workflows, validation rules, and approval processes, roll up summary fields, like all that stuff. And then we would get and do visual force with no Apex code. So we would like do all kinds of stuff with visual force with just standard controllers. And it really showed the power of what you could do, like how much you could really get done without writing any code. And then we would kind of have this thought exercise, and we would give like, solving the problem for instance of making records unique, based on a combination of field values, for instance. So like a composite key.
Yeah.
It's not obvious, but you could do it. Back then we would do it with a workflow rule. You could probably still do it with a flow, like a record triggered flow, like before that, pulls the two fields into a unique field, pulls two field values into a unique field. And now you have like a composite key, right? But some of the ones, like it can be really hard, like, and I think this is I was going through this with Beach Horn, who I just did a deep dive recording with him on Salesforce Shield. If you want to like make a piece of data go away from the user interface, it is still available through the API and through reports. And so his whole point was you can do that, but like then you need to make sure that you have some event, what's it called?
Event monitoring.
Yeah, event monitoring turned on so that if somebody accesses that data, you can know that they accessed it. Because the only other way to do it is have it in a separate object, which has a different sharing setting, which has its own. That's funky. It's not.
Oh yeah. It's
not great. It's you can do it, but it's not great. So like this was the thing where like you can do certain things without writing code, but when it gets to the point where doing the thing without writing code is more complex, and more awkward and clunky, than just going and writing some code to do it. Go write the code, right? Like that's, so that's kind of where I was getting to is like, yeah, don't write code if you don't have to, but when you need to, go write the code.
Yeah, and I think that in general, like, so I want to say that, yeah, I've enjoyed messing around with SOQL Lib. I think it's a great tool, and I can definitely see its use cases and how easy it is. The other thing that I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit that I am is a bit gnarly around some of these patterns as well is that, so any of these selector patterns like this are doing dynamic SOQL to write your query in the background. They're not doing, so there are two types of queries in Salesforce. There are static queries and dynamic queries. In effect, they run at the same speed now. It used to be that static queries were actually slightly faster. But now I think it's negligible if it even exists anymore. The big thing, though, is that there is so much stuff that Salesforce gives you out of the box around that security model you were just on about, that the more you can leverage that, the better. And as soon as you start writing your own code, but more importantly, as soon as you start doing like dynamic SOQL and things like that, you start to just open the doors a little bit to some of these things occurring in ways that you don't expect. And so a really good example here is I'm working on a product at the moment where I've been writing a user interface. So we had some existing stuff that is in Aura. I'm rewriting it in Lightning Web Components. I am deleting thousands of lines of code, like genuinely thousands, because A, Aura is a lot bigger and heavier than LWC, but B, I can now use the GraphQL connector to do the query straight from my LWC. It respects all the object permissions and field permissions. So if I don't have access to the field, it doesn't bring it down for me. I'm then using the Lightning record edit form component as well. If I want to just have some data, so if I'm doing a list, I can use a GraphQL. Cool. If I'm doing just a single record, I can do that, but I can customize the UI to my heart's content around it, and overwrite the standard behavior and things like that. And it's just so much stuff I'm able to do, but just having the confidence that, like, okay, great, the permissions are still maintained. If Salesforce changes something in its permissions model now, I don't have to worry about it. Right. Whereas, every bit of code you write is something you got to maintain and support. Yeah. So
every bit of code you write is something you need to maintain 100%.
Yeah. And so I would say my takeaway from this is going to be, this is a really useful library, and definitely one I will be looking at and considering more heavily. There's a couple of places where I could see this being a much better option than some of the existing libraries that are in place that I've been using. I still think for some of my consulting side of the world, I'm probably still going to err on the side of caution in adding an extra kind of apex and like higher, extra stuff that doesn't need to be there, because again, I'm just so heavily on that position of every piece of code you add in slows something down for the user, and we're going to be aware of that. But this has been cool, though. This has been really, really good to see. But I
feel like this was our most productive live stream in a little while. So.
Yeah. Well, I hope people have enjoyed the discussion around it as well, because I think it's one of the things that Peter and I discussed really early on with these live streams is talking about the reality of the world, rather than it's not black or white. There's a lot of grey in the middle of it. And there will be, as we saw with that kind of slide that I shared, there's a lot of instances where doing these patterns won't make sense for you. But here's a really good kind of way of, hopefully this has been a useful way of people understanding what they can do with it, what it's meant to do, and then deciding for themselves if it makes sense for them or not.
Yeah,
if it makes sense for you, then hopefully it'll help.
100%. And I've done a lot of looking at people writing about software and building software, writing about building software or best practices. And one of the things that I always react to and I'm very sensitive to is anytime anyone asserts this is the best way without any qualifications, I'm always really leery of that, because writing software, as much as I have not done anywhere near as much as like true production software as you've done, right? But as much as I've been around the industry for 2.5 decades, I know that everything that you do in building a piece of software is a compromise, and you're always deciding what are you optimizing for. You can make a choice to cache something, but then that incurs an overhead, in your, if that's to make it faster to access, but then like, how do you optimize that cache? How do you refresh it? How do you make sure that it goes back and gets the latest values when it's supposed to? But maybe you don't want to always go to the database. And so, but it's not that going to the database is bad. It's not that caching is better. It's that each one has a reason for using that option.
Yeah.
And you need to understand what it is you're trying to do, what the goals are, what's the purpose of the thing that you're building, so that you can make the right choice to then actually use that particular feature. And I think that goes with all of these libraries that we're exploring.
Yeah, definitely. As Gear just said, maintainability is key, and it's also a question of competence. And I completely agree. Like, making things as maintainable as you can is going to be a big help. Two final things. First of all is to say just something else that popped in my head. The other split between product and non-product developers is the security review. Salesforce's security review really favors selector patterns.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So there's another thing.
Pro tip right there if you're writing your first App Exchange app.
Oh, yes. So that was really cool. The other thing that I want to talk about while we've got a few minutes left is what's happening in 2 weeks' time.
What is happening in 2 weeks' time? Are we going to have a special guest or something?
Yes, so in 2 weeks' time is yet another live stream, of course, and then there won't be one for a month because I have some holiday booked to go see a family member, and Peter needs a break from me. But in 2 weeks' time, we will have. I don't know if I've mentioned this person before, or at least 30 times so far on this stream. But we're going to have Andy Fawcett joining us.
Who?
Yeah, so Andy Fawcett.
Andrea Fawcett. What?
Yeah. I'll tell him you called it that. No, it's Andy Fawcett is, for those who, probably the two people that might not be familiar with Andy Fawcett in the Salesforce ecosystem. I had Andy on a podcast a while ago. I would say Andy, I think, has had more influence on the Salesforce ecosystem than anyone else. I think that would be a fair thing. I mean, maybe Mark Benioff might hold a candle to him, but like in terms of actual contributions and impact of someone across, between FF Lib, DLRS, like the work he's done at Heroku, and
running like parts of Salesforce engineering for large chunks of time and product. Exactly. Yeah, so, that's a really he might just be the one. You're right, but he's definitely like there's probably like a top 5 or top 10, and he would be in that group every single time. So
and then the rest of us are down in the bottom feeding 5. So Andy's gonna be joining us in a couple of weeks' time, and we're gonna be doing something slightly different. Andy has just left a role recently at Heroku, where he was head of developer marketing, and one of the things Heroku have just released a few weeks ago is Heroku App Link. So Heroku App Link is a way of taking your Heroku APIs and exposing them into Salesforce one way, so that your Apex and Flow functions can call your Heroku API, and secondly, so that your Heroku can write back to your Salesforce org nice and easily.
Again, so in a predictable set of APIs as well, right?
Yes, and like security and the setup is all managed and looked after by Salesforce, which makes it really, really nice and easy.
Are there only certain languages that they support, or does it support all the Heroku languages? That's really, I hadn't thought about that.
We're going to be using Node and JavaScript because obviously we're big fanboys of that now. But I believe there's a Python SDK out there, and I imagine they're probably going to add more as we go.
And I wonder if there'll be open source, because like there's a bunch of like sort of other languages that there's like other build packs for, like Elixir is one of them, and a few others. So
Andy's going to be joining us next in 2 weeks' time, and we're going to build something quite special. So I'm not going to give too much away now. You'll have to turn up to the stream. But let's just
special,
say,
like a Fortnum and Mason box of chocolates.
Someone's got rich taste. Special as in unique. Special as in ridiculous and stupid.
Nice. Okay, I'm excited.
We've chosen something that has no real world practical implications for anyone to ever use. This will not be production code. But it will be something that hopefully is a bit of fun and silliness.
Those are the best demos, really.
And has major nerd credibility points on this one as well. Like there is a certain level of like nerdy deep cut on this use case that I imagine some of our viewers will get, and others will then have to go out and buy the book to get it.
Well, and like, what are Fortnum and Mason chocolatiers other than chocolate nerds? So this is like a Fortnum and Mason box of chocolates. Fantastic.
There we go. Exactly. There's a wonderful link. So if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please think about doing so, and remember to hit the bell icon to stay notified. And again, same on the Cloudbytes TV LinkedIn page. If you're watching via LinkedIn, if you subscribe to that, you will be notified when it's coming up. But it is 2 weeks from today. Thank you so much for joining us and following along. I'm just going to post into the chat as well a couple of quick links to some great blogs on the selector layer. So one is from, there's no space in that. That's just terrible. So apologies. I will repost them properly now as well. There is one from Andy, which is his, and I can't edit them either, which is really annoying. One is from Andy Fawcett about him setting up the selector layer originally, and the other one is from the team at Beyond the Cloud, who behind our library today, SOQL Lib. Thank you to Piotr and the team at Beyond the Cloud for producing this. lovely little library.
Yeah, it's nice. Good one.
Yeah, if you've got a library or tool you'd love to see us use, then let us know, and we can have a play around with that. And as ever, thank you everyone for watching. Please give it a little like if you've enjoyed this today. Thank you, Peter, for joining me and working through this with me. And we will see you all in 2 weeks' time for our fun Heroku session. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone, and we'll catch up with you on the next one.
Wear your Heroku swag.